For me, the kind of ray of sunshine is more about how we impact each other. You know, every person you come across either gives you something or you give them something. And I think that for me is what makes me smile. That's the ray of sunshine.
Earlier this year, I turned 40 and I wanted to do something meaningful alongside all the celebrating. I decided to ask my community to support me in helping an underprivileged community and give them a small yet transformative boost. This is how the Rainbow Boosters project was born. In sharing the idea with people, I realised that we all know of a teacher, a family member, a friend or an author that has made a profound impact on our life. I wanted to create a space where we can share those stories. So welcome to the Rays of Sunshine series. Today, I'm really excited to be speaking with Hash Chavda. Professionally, Hash is a powerhouse commercial deal shifter and negotiator with over 20 years experience in the IT industry. Personally, she's my big sister. Well, technically she's my cousin, but with her 3 other sisters, I'd spend most of my Christmases and summer holidays together. So we've always felt like one unit. Hash is one of my personal rays of sunshine. I feel like she showed me what a successful career looks like, what lifelong strong friendships look like, and that the world is small and you can live, work and thrive wherever you want. Proactively and subconsciously, she's taught me how to respect women, how challenging it is for women, especially from a South Asian background, but most of all, she's taught me to laugh. Hash always makes life feel lighter and achievable. It's a treat to be able to speak with her on this series, to hear her thoughts and stories. I hope you enjoy the episode. Hi Hash, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you, Pritesh?
Yeah, doing really well, thank you. Welcome to the series. I want to know who your ray of sunshine was. Who was the person or teacher that's had the biggest impact on your life, and how did they help shape your future?
Well, for me, it's not one person. It's kind of a few people along the way. I think when I was younger, it was the teachers. You know, they're the people who shape you. The one person that does come to mind is Mrs. Marsden, and she was one of these cool teachers. But she was obviously, you know, looking back, I can see she was obviously trying to be herself in what was a fairly kind of staid environment. And I think she was just trying to change things in her own way, but also kind of instilled in you that trust of yourself, you know, trust yourself that you know what you should do. And then kind of again later at high school, there's a couple of teachers, Mr. Page, he was the one who kind of, despite doing really badly in maths at O level, encouraged me to explore the logic and gave me insight into how maths works. And built my, and you know, at the same time building my confidence and my self-belief. And the other one I think of is a guy called Mr. Price, who taught religious studies, which was, he kind of again changed it slightly so that it fit the environment. So he kind of made it into more of a debating society, and that kind of really helped you to challenge thinking and status quo and those skills of learning how to influence others through that kind of positive debate. And then, you know, every stage of my career, I think, and just life in general, there's been people along the way. For me, the kind of ray of sunshine, as you call it, is more about how we impact each other. You know, every person you come across either gives you something or you give them something. And I think that for me is what makes me smile. That's the ray of sunshine, is the way we influence each other. And it's not an age or an experience. It's we all contribute to each other's, you know, success, I guess.
Yeah, I love that. And also, if that maths teacher didn't encourage you, then your career could have been quite different, eh?
You know, I was ready to give up on maths, and he was like, no, you know, because lots. You have good and bad teachers, but he took the positive, and he saw the potential, wanted me to. He actually took his time out to help me train and you know practice for the Oxbridge exams, because he really wanted me to go to Oxford. And he was very clear from the beginning. You know, I'm happy to put the time in and help you with this. And if at the end of it you decide not to apply, that's absolutely fine. But I want you to explore the kind of the opportunity, really. And you know, for reasons of, I would say, social mobility and confidence, I decided not to. So it's amazing that your brother did go to Oxford and study. But it's, you know, each generation of its time, and I didn't feel like that was a step too far for me. But it at least showed me that people are willing to give their time, you know, in their own, you know, in their own investment, with, you know, no guaranteed output, and spend it on me, who was just one of another, you know, a class full of people who they saw potential in. And I think that's the gift of what you're trying to do here, is kind of just enable those, you know, acts of kindness, and put together people that can with people that need.
It's just, I just see it as creating the spaces, and you never know who's going to take the opportunity on both sides. You know, whoever's going to be in a position to support, and those who are open to receiving. Because, you know, in one of the earlier episodes, Navi was talking about, you can give something to somebody, but if they're not open to making the most of the opportunity, then it's just going to go flat, and it never actually comes to anything. So I think your articulation of how it's both sides, and how we connect and how we help each other is really important in when you think about this. Just kind of tapping into education a little bit, but also access to technology. How has it played a role in your personal and professional success?
Well, for me, education was kind of one of the most important things. My dad was a great believer in getting an education, and always tried to encourage us to work hard at school. His aim for us was a little bit different. It was more about partly a better life, but also partly a better husband. But I think his premise was the same, and I think it's definitely instilled in me and my sisters. And I think once I got a feeling for it, I could see where it could go. And I've always been someone who likes to push the boundaries of what you can imagine, or what someone thinks you can do. And I am at heart a rebel, so I'll always push where someone tells me I can't. All through that, you know, even though it wasn't necessarily what they understood or could imagine for themselves, my parents both extremely grateful for their support, and they've, you know, walked alongside me, not always knowing where it was going to go, and certainly not necessarily where they thought it was going to go, but, you know, their support was without conditions. As far as technology goes, though, I didn't even touch or see a computer till I was at university. That was my first exposure. My first experience was within the first term. We had to write a computer program in I can't even remember the language now. And it was a friend on the course who actually kind of opened my eyes to a computer. We had a computer room, and he basically showed me how to get started. And one of the things I say to this day that's helped me in my career is literally spending hours in there on what was effectively a game, but it was a game trying to teaching you how to touch type, which, for those who two-finger type, it's a massive productivity gain. So best thing I would suggest anyone learn is to touch type, and I'm sure people do now. And I've always been kind of interested in technology and what's coming next and what's new, and I like to see what's going on in the world and what's, you know, and how that's changing. And in my second year, I lived with some friends who were actually doing computer science, and it probably sounds archaic now, but they were actually, their project, end of year project, was to work out how to depict waves on the shoreline in the computer graphics, which, you know, looking at computer programs and games now, the graphics are amazing. But it had to start somewhere, right? You know, my final year, I did things like quantum mechanics and chaos theory, which is now all being used in, you know, AI and other things. So you could see where it was going, you could see the potential. And I've always been a bit of an early adopter. I've always liked having like the latest, newest gadgets just to see what it could do. You know, I've still got somewhere a second generation iPlayer, a second generation game. I was one of the first people on Palm Pilot, which, if those who don't understand, everything you do around diaries and planning and to-do lists is that's what you could do, but not real time. You had to sync it with the computer. And then these things just get, all these things are there to help you, and then they get developed and life goes faster. And we're now at conversations about artificial intelligence and how that can help the workplace, and hopefully mean that people aren't doing jobs that are mundane and repetitive. I guess I've seen firsthand as well, being a generation that saw these, through these generations of changes. So when I first started working as an accountant with Unilever on the trainee scheme, the first accounting ledgers I did were manual, pencil, right. 2 pages, flipping backwards and forwards, waiting, and then they moved to sort of these 3-inch floppy disks, which are these big, but you had to wait till overnight for the system to update. And all the way through to what we take for granted now with Windows and Apples and everything you can do on a computer, multitasking and all the rest of it. And being of the generation that still remembers what it was like before, I think is quite unique, because you grow up with it in a very different way. Yeah. So I think it's absolutely key. I think technology is our future. Digital literacy is absolutely, you've got to start young. But it doesn't have to be with technology. There's a really good charity called Hour of Code, who actually have created practical, Blue Peter style games where you are teaching some of the youngest children how to understand logic, how to understand the kind of sequence, and how things could, the series of yes nos that can get you to an outcome. So I think it is important. I think for kids growing up now, it's part of everyday life, right? It's going to be even more part of their lives going forward. So I think, businesses, organizations, those of us that can influence, and what you're doing is great, need to make sure that whatever they are doing going forward, they're building that access in. We've seen with the recent pandemic what the impact was on schools and children for those that could get access to a device during that time and digital learning, versus those that couldn't. And what we need to ensure is that we're not creating a different type of two-tier society, where those that have access and those that don't. Yes, it's great that government organizations are using this technology to make life easier and make things quicker and faster, but they also need to make sure they bring everyone along with them.
It's really interesting listening to you talk about the time gap, because you were in that period where it was so new when you were late teens, and now I'm having conversations with my 6-year-old and 4-year-old about the things they do on their tablet, because it's so second nature to them, and they're just surrounded by it. And when I did Case for Change, that was one of the things that really highlighted that even in the Western developed world, the digital divide is so big still, and the pandemic just made it worse, really, that, to your point, access has to be equal for people to be able to do the basic things now, because it's basic, right? It's schools and education facilities for ease are putting stuff out online, and if you can't get to those things, then you're at a disadvantage already.
There's a really good film called I Am Daniel Blake.
Okay.
And it's literally about a guy who's unemployed or loses his job, and he's trying to register with the Social Security. But if you don't have a phone, you don't have access to a printer, you don't have access to a computer, it's really difficult. Yeah. And governments and people in authority need to understand that not everyone has this. Yeah. And make facility for it. Good thing in England is you can go to a library and do things like this. But it's going to be so ubiquitous in society that the sooner you can get kids on it, the better. I mean, I remember when you were a kid, and it was, trying to work out the video schedule to be able to record the program. You would do it in a flash.
Yeah.
Whereas, my mom would kind of struggle and take her time with it. That is the generation. But we're talking now a very different world going forward.
Just listening to you speak, I remember coming to stay with you in London, and you had a Netflix subscription probably really early on when it was coming through the post. And and now the kids are literally, why hasn't my film downloaded by itself? It's the period of time that we've moved through is so fast, and keeping up is a challenge. And to some degree, personally, one of the reasons this Rainbow Boosters project came around is my relationship with my kids. And one of the conversations that I have with Rayan is I tell him that there are people in other parts of the world, even in our neighborhood probably, that don't have exactly the same access. And he just says, well, that's not fair. And as a 6-year-old to just go, that's not fair, makes you think, oh, then we have a role to do something about that. So yeah, really interesting. At the end of each of the series, I ask everyone to share a positive message or a quote that inspired you throughout your life and continues to motivate you. So what's yours?
So really the quote that I've lived my life by and still do, which is a phrase that was on a plaque that my parents used to have when I was growing up, and I now have. And it basically says, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I think, all bits of that, no matter what you do. And for me, that's been a great solace when I've been dealing with challenging things. We're not going to change the world overnight, but each of us can do our little piece. And I think things like this, connecting the world, and the world is so much more connected than it used to be. And digitally, that's become so much easier. And I think, we can all contribute, and we should do as much as we can. So yeah, that's kind of how that's what I've lived my life with.
I love that. I'm going to take this opportunity because you just reminded me of one of the quotes I live by, and just the way the series is set up, I never really get to share mine. It's similar. It's by Macklemore, and it's a line in one of his songs, and it says, don't try to change the world, find something that you love, do that every single day, do that for the rest of your life, and then eventually the world will change. And I think it's linked to this narrative we hear about what you can, focus on what you can control and do that. So yeah, I love that. And it's really important, and to some degree that's what we're doing. You find something that you care about. We talked about in previous series episodes why I wanted to do tech versus homelessness or health or something else, and it's the thing that I care about. In the same way with you, I'm a tech geek. I love all these things and try and figure out how they help us. So yeah, what a lovely quote. And I won't tell Massey that you've got the sign in your house now.
She knows. But it did make me think from the intro that you kindly gave of me, because it made me think, and actually it was lovely to hear, because it does remind you what you've done in your life. And for me, my only counsel is exactly that to anyone that came to talk to me, was very much about do what you love, because you'll be excellent at it.
Yeah.
And everything else will follow. So yeah, I think that's really important.
Yeah. Look, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to me on this series. I love spending time with you, as you know, but being able to put you in this space is always amusing for me as well. This Rays of Sunshine series is linked to the Rainbow Boosters project, as we talked about, where we're supporting underprivileged children by connecting them to the internet and a community to ensure that they don't get left behind in the digital world. Check out more at rainbowboosters.com. All the links are in the comments below, and the next episode will be with you in just a few days. Thanks, Ash.